For half a century, Hungary had lived on the edge of defeat. Decade after decade, its strategy was one of endurance. Not conquest, not glory, simply survival. Fortresses built to delay, rivers used as barriers, soldiers trained to hold and hold, until relief came, if it ever did. Since the mid-1500s, the Ottoman Empire had pressed deep into Hungarian lands. City after city fell beneath the crescent banner. Across the plains, the thunder of Ottoman cavalry had become the sound of inevitability. But in 1595, that inevitability broke. After 50 long years of fighting only to endure, Hungary decided to strike back. The target was not random. It was the fortress that had kept Hungary trembling for generations. Esztergom, the stone guardian of the Danube. At that time, Esztergom stood like a clenched fist above the river. Massive, isolated, but imperfectly protected. Its Ottoman garrison was strong, its cannons well placed, yet the empire's main armies were marching elsewhere, waging battles on distant fronts. For the first time in decades, opportunity breached the walls of fate. A rapid offensive was planned. Infantry, heavy cavalry, siege guns, and engineers gathered under a single banner. The goal was clear: retake Esztergom, break the myth of Ottoman permanence.
To understand the weight of that moment, you must understand what Esztergom meant. The fortress sat on high ground above the Danube River, its towers watching every passing vessel, every crossing, every movement of trade or war. Whoever held Esztergom didn't just hold a city. They held control over Central Europe's lifeline. When the Ottomans captured it in the mid-16th century, they gained a window and a weapon into the heart of Hungary. From there, they could monitor the river, safeguard their own supply routes, and project power far north without moving entire armies. It was not just military strength, it was psychological domination. For decades, Hungary accepted this grim reality. Border fortresses formed a defensive chain meant to slow the enemy, not end the war. Yet, by the early 1590s, that system had begun to fracture. The front lines blurred. The Danube, once Hungary's shield, had become the Ottomans' highway. Inside Esztergom, the Ottoman commanders sensed the shift. They knew their fortress was valuable, perhaps too valuable. And so the inspections began. The old stone walls were reinforced with timber and packed earth. Artillery platforms were moved to command better arcs. Water sources were guarded, stores measured, grain counted, gunpowder rationed. The fortress grew quiet, not fearful, but vigilant. Even so, a shadow of unease lingered. The empire's main forces were far away. Esztergom, though formidable, was now alone. Across the frontier, the Habsburg monarchy and its Hungarian allies studied the opportunity. What had once been a question of defense became one of elimination. Could they destroy the Ottoman bastion on the Danube once and for all? It would require more than courage. It would demand unity, precision, endurance. By late spring of 1595, preparations quickened. One truth was clear: the war would not be won by hesitation. In Vienna, orders were signed quietly but decisively. No more observation, no more waiting. The siege of Esztergom was to begin. The imperial army did not appear like a single thunderclap. It gathered piece by piece. German infantry formed the disciplined backbone. Hungarian troops joined, guiding the army through rivers, hills, and paths known only to their ancestors. Italian engineers and gunners brought siege expertise and the heavy cannon that would turn stone into dust. It was not an army of haste. It was an army of resolve. Cannon trains creaked over rough roads.
Horses strained under weight. Supply wagons followed in endless chains because everyone understood the same truth. Sieges are not won by speed. They are won by endurance. As the army crept closer to Esztergom, the tone changed. This was not some border skirmish they would fight and forget. They were marching toward a fortress that had stood unbroken for generations. None expected to leave until the matter was settled. By early summer, the first sightings reached the Ottoman scouts. Across the rolling green of the Danube Valley, campfires, banners, columns of dust. The enemy was coming. Inside the fortress, final preparations began. Communications between towers were tested. Signal fires and colored flags were practiced by night and day. Civilians were moved inward, deeper into the citadel. Every man knew his post. Every cannon had its target marked. Then dawn came, the kind of dawn that history remembers. The river mist thinned, and in the pale orange light, silhouettes moved on the opposite shore. Artillery platforms, earthen mounds, men and horses assembling in deliberate rhythm.
Moments later, a single Habsburg cannon thundered, its round whistling across the river to crash against Esztergom's wall. The echo rolled through the city like thunder from the heavens. And suddenly, centuries of defense gave way to confrontation. The Ottomans answered in kind, calculated, methodical, disciplined. Their guns replied with roar after roar, stone cracking, dust spilling into sunlight. The battle of endurance had begun. Day after day, the cannons spoke. Day after day, Esztergom groaned. By the third week, what had begun as shock turned into routine, the terrifying normalcy of war. The citizens stopped flinching at cannon fire. The garrison stopped looking up when walls shuddered. What frightened them now was not the noise, but the quiet certainty that each day the fortress was dying, piece by piece. Habsburg engineers studied every impact. They sketched the cracks, measured the angle of fractures. Slowly, one truth emerged. The western wall, old and repaired many times before, was weakening faster than the rest. Orders spread through the camp. Guns recalibrated, barrels re-angled, fire concentrated. The air turned thick with dust and smoke. On the third morning after the adjustment, the entire western section shook violently. The wall was collapsing inward. Inside Esztergom, chaos rippled. Officers shouted over the thunder. Civilians screamed. Ottoman soldiers rushed to reinforce the breach with earth and timber, but the cracks widened. Fear crept in where courage had stood. The Habsburg commanders saw their moment. Under a storm of artillery fire, infantry advanced, clutching ladders and pikes, shields raised against splinters of stone. They crossed the killing field toward the smoking breach. The sound of drums blended with screams, steel, and musketry. Hand-to-hand fighting erupted among the ruins. The air inside the fortress was smoke and fire and desperation. Men climbed, fell, climbed again. The Danube below ran red with runoff from shattered stone and dust. As the sun sank, the Ottoman commander faced the truth none before him had dared to voice. Esztergom might hold, but only at the cost of annihilation. Supplies were gone, ammunition nearly spent. The walls were open wounds. That night, as darkness cloaked the city, negotiations began. At dawn, smoke still curled from the broken towers, but a new banner rose above them. The Habsburg flag replaced the crescent. For the first time in half a century, Esztergom was once again in Hungarian hands. When the guns finally fell silent, the silence itself felt unnatural. The survivors stood among ruins. The fortress was broken, but it was theirs. Imperial troops entered carefully, not triumphantly. The victory felt heavy, earned by exhaustion more than celebration. Civilians emerged from cellars, trembling, unsure what victory meant after so much loss. The Ottoman defenders, disciplined even in defeat, were allowed to march out under truce. They left not with shame, but with the grim dignity of soldiers who had done everything they could. As the banners changed and the smoke cleared, the meaning of Esztergom's fall reached far beyond its walls. For Hungary and the Habsburgs, it was proof that the Ottoman grip on Central Europe was not unbreakable. Strength, patience, and unity could reclaim what once seemed lost forever. For the Ottoman Empire, Esztergom was a lesson and a warning. Distance weakens even the mightiest empires. Overstretched lines, divided forces, long roads, all carry a cost. And for the people of Hungary, the siege marked the end of a long humiliation. After years of standing still, Hungary had finally moved forward. When history recalls the Siege of Esztergom, it remembers not only who won or lost, but what changed. It was not the end of a war, only the end of a chapter. But it was a chapter where belief itself shifted. Because in wars like these, the decisive weapon is rarely steel or gunpowder. It is belief, the conviction that the tide can turn, that centuries of endurance can one day lead to advance. And in 1595, on the banks of the Danube, that belief returned, carried not by kings or emperors, but by soldiers who refused to retreat any longer.